Hello and welcome to another episode of Doc Review with me, Camelia Shambayati. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the critically acclaimed and Oscar-nominated documentary, I Am Not Your Negro, directed by Raoul Peck and narrated by famous Hollywood actor Samuel L. Jackson. And joining us today, we have Tony Warner, who is a historian and film exhibitor who hosts screenings at the British Film Institute and other cinemas. And he's also currently delivering a 5-week course on James Baldwin at the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton. And beside him is Omowale Rupert, who is committed to the restoration of justice for African and other oppressed people of the world. He is the founder of the Pan-African Society Community Forum, which is a revolutionary Pan-Africanist organization. Now, in I Am Not Your Negro, Raoul Peck brings alive James Baldwin's unfinished book about the legacies of black leaders Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. The documentary gives a radical, up-to-date examination of race in America using Baldwin's original words and a flood of rich archive material. It's also a journey into black history that connects the past of the civil rights movement to the present struggle. Let's have a look at our first clip.
If any white man in the world says, give me liberty or give me death, the entire white world applauds. When a black man says exactly the same thing, he is judged a criminal and treated like one, and everything possible is done to make an example of this bad nigger so there won't be any more like him.
The story of the Negro in America is the story of America. It is not a pretty story.
Most of the white Americans I've ever encountered, sure, they have nothing whatever against Negroes. That's really not the question. Really a kind of apathy and ignorance. You don't know what's happening on the other side of the wall because you don't want to know.
In America, I was free only in battle, never free to rest.
We need to take action, any kind of action, by any means necessary.
They needed us to pick the cotton, and now they don't need us anymore. Now they don't need us, they're going to kill us all off. There are days when you wonder what your role is in this country and what your future is in it. I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. The question you've got to ask yourself, the white population of this country's got to ask itself, is why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger, I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. And you got to find out why. And the future of the country depends on that.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Tony, I would like to start off by talking about James Baldwin himself and about his work. Can you tell us a little bit about his work? I mean, he was supremely articulate.
Yeah, he was a very well-established writer. He was internationally well-known. And he used his famous celebrity to actually help the civil rights movement. So even though he was successful in France, he came back to America to actually get involved in helping to kind of guide and lead the civil rights movement and give speeches in the Deep South, where he was at risk of attack. So he's kind of a legendary character. So
was he alienated from the US, and is that why he left?
He left because he felt that he would either kill somebody who was white who was trying to abuse him, or he might be killed by somebody who was white who was trying to abuse him. So yeah, he had a major kind of a crisis whereby he felt he had to leave the country, otherwise he'd kill someone or be killed himself. That's how bad the racism was affecting him. That's when he went to France.
And Omowale, what did you make of Raoul Peck's portrayal of James Baldwin in this documentary?
It's interesting. I saw, well, there are a few kind of quotes that came out, and I found the quotes quite interesting. I don't remember them word for word necessarily, but there was a sentiment which ran through them, which was, if we appeal, as Africans that is, if we appeal to the humanity of Europeans, maybe they will treat us with humanity. And that seemed to me to be a theme that was running through the contributions that were being made in the documentary.
And do you agree or disagree with this sentiment?
Well, I think it's got to be looked at within the context of its time. So at that point in history, there was a real sense of, look, let's be nice to these people and let's see how they respond to us. And of course, it's not about the people as such. They are part of a system. The system has principles which are the opposite of humanism. Exploitation is the principle that governs capitalism and the white supremacy system that exists in US Satan. So that was not going to work. But it's only right that we as a people should try that as a course. It's the human way to approach it.
Okay, I'd like to talk about now about, that's a really good point, by the way, about how Baldwin and Raoul Peck, they talk about the stories of Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, and Martin Luther King. And of course, to our viewers, they might be surprised that in this documentary we're shown that they have more similarities than differences, when we see that their approach to tackling racism has been very different. One advocate that Malcolm X has been an advocate for violence, whereas Martin Luther King is famous, of course, for taking a peaceful approach. Tony, can you elaborate more on this?
Well, I would say that Malcolm X advocated self-defense. He said if someone slaps you, you should slap them back, whereas Martin Luther King would say turn the other cheek. So they had two contrasting approaches, but towards the end of their lives they came together. They had a lot of things in common, and they were speaking more in similarity than in difference towards the end of their lives.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there for now as we take a look at our next clip from I Am Not Your Negro, which shows James Baldwin talking in an interview, challenging white people to think about the creation of racism.
I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I'm forced to be an optimist. I'm forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive. But the Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they maligned so long. What white people have to do is try to find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger, I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. The question you've got to ask yourself, the white population of this country has got to ask itself, North and South, because it's one country, and for a Negro, there is no difference in the North and the South. There's just a difference in the way they castrate you. But the fact of the castration is the American fact. If I'm not the nigger here, and you invented him, you, the white people, invented him, then you've got to find out why.
So, Omawale, there was an example of what you mentioned before about how black people were appealing to the humanity of the oppressor and trying to bring harmony. So what is wrong with this approach? Or you were saying it was appropriate for the time, and why?
Well, it was appropriate to make the attempt, but it was never going to work. I mean, the history of US Satan, it's one of genocide. It's one where European criminals were brought over. They committed genocide against the American Indians, and then committed a second genocide against African people through the whole enslavement process. Whenever you have settler colonialism, and US Satan is a settler colonial state, wherever you have that, whether it's US Satan, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, wherever you find it in the world, you find massive violence, and you find people that are wholly unreasonable. And so you will not get a reasonable response from Zionists in Palestine. You will not get a reasonable response from the Europeans who have committed genocide against the Aborigines in Australia. And similarly, you will not get a sensible humanistic response from the Europeans who have committed genocide and taken over US Satan, Canada, and even the South and Central Americans. So it's not going to work. They are entrenched in a position of wrongness, and they have to be removed from that position of wrongness.
Tony, what is your thoughts on this and what Baldwin was saying in that clip? I mean, could you paint a picture of the racial tensions during that time?
Well, during that time, you had actually organized attacks in the black community with respect to bombings of black churches and shootings of black men and women and dogs being set on them. Of course, there was massive violence in Vietnam, of which Baldwin was also against. And I suppose when you think about today's situation, you have situations where there are people being shot on camera by police officers, and the officers get away with it. And of course, there's wars taking place in Afghanistan and Iraq, which, you know, for Iraq, of course, was an illegal war, which with no evidence to actually, you know, make the war happen in the first place. So you can see lots of parallels with what Baldwin was saying back in the 60s to what's happening now in 2017. And that's the kind of worrying, spooky thing, that some of the things he was saying now are still entirely relevant.
What do you make of Baldwin's efforts in confronting the racism in the media? I mean, in the beginning of the documentary, you see him being interviewed, and the interviewer, the white person, was saying that all black people shouldn't have anything to complain about. And of course, people laugh. But isn't it quite astonishing to believe that, did he genuinely mean this? Was he ignorant to the racism of the time?
I think, yes, he was ignorant to racism at the time, but you can still find that attitude now, because if you just watch Fox News, for example, you find the same sort of sensibilities and statements being expressed by the same commentator, or not the same commentators, but different commentators 30 years later on. Baldwin was very brave because, as I said, he risked his life to actually kind of get involved in the civil rights movement. But he's also brave to take on board these, talking heads back in the 60s, because at that time it was very rare to see black people on TV in the first place, far less to have him on television upgrading or downgrading a professor at Yale, because that was just unheard of. So even that image there is like really iconic.
And Omawale, throughout the film, the documentary, we see quite poignant scenes and quite disgusting and the horrific treatment of black people in the US. Why is it, how could that so many could be thinking that it was okay at the time to take part in it, or to be silent and in a way complicit? Yeah,
it's actually amazing that you have a situation in US Satan where the lynching of African people was commonplace and accepted and institutionalized. And I say institutionalized because state forces did not do anything to reprimand those that committed these heinous murders. And what was interesting in the film was they took a number of clips from the year 2014, where they showed, as you've just identified, Tony, a number of innocent African people just being killed for no obvious reason, in many cases by the law enforcement agencies themselves. Now, Marcus Garvey made the point that the real rulers of what I call US Satan were actually these lunatics on the right-wing fringes, the Ku Klux Klan and their associated agencies. And now it's, there's evidence beginning to emerge that in police uniform, what you have are people from these right-wing lunatic fringes joining the police force and using that as an opportunity to be able to murder Africans with impunity. So what we see is a truly savage state.
I would like to pick up more on those points you were making about sort of the legalized forms of oppression that black people are experiencing. And it's quite covert, I suppose, in its form of racism. But for now, we're going to take a look at another clip from the documentary, I Am Not Your Negro, which shows Baldwin defend the existence of racism against a white academic during an interview.
All this emphasis upon black man and white does emphasize something which is here, but it emphasizes it or perhaps exaggerates it, and therefore makes us put people together in groups which they ought not to be in. I have more in common with a black scholar than I have with a white man who's against scholarship. And you have more in common with a white author than you have with someone who's against all literature. So why must we always concentrate on color or on religion or this? There are other ways of connecting men.
I'll tell you this. When I left this country in 1948, I left this country for one reason only, one reason. I didn't care where I went. I might have gone to Hong Kong, I might have gone to Timbuktu. I ended up in Paris, on the streets of Paris, with $40 in my pocket on the theory that nothing worse could happen to me there than had already happened to me here. You talk about making it as a writer by yourself. You had to be able then to turn off all the antenna with which you live, because once you turn your back on this society, you may die. You may die. And it's very hard to sit at a typewriter and concentrate on that if you're afraid of the world around you. The years I lived in Paris did one thing for me. They released me from that particular social terror, which was not the paranoia of my own mind, but a real social danger.
So in that clip, we see two opposing views on racism. Tony, why is it problematic, that phrase we hear from the Yale professor, why can't we get past seeing colour? I mean, to many people, this sounds like a nice thing to say.
It's a nice thing to say, but it doesn't exist in reality. That it's not like you are colourblind when you walk down the street. So to say you don't see colour is to say that you don't see at all, because you obviously do see colour. And I suppose behind that is a denial of the consequences of being a colour in this society, and that if you have a brown skin, for example, you're the victim of police oppression, you're the victim of being stopped and searched at the airport, not the airport, stopped and searched in the street, but also being stopped and searched at the airport on suspicion of being a so-called terrorist. You mentioned about legality before, and I should mention that in James Baldwin times, a man called John Sessions. And John Sessions was involved in voter suppression in America, in that he tried to stop black people from voting, and actually prosecuted a couple of black people involved in the civil rights movement. And now John Sessions is the Attorney General for the United States of America. So that kind of shows you how far the circle has come.
That there's enemies within our ranks as well.
I'm talking about white supremacy. John Sessions had made a joke about the Ku Klux Klan just being not that bad. And there are actually people like Steve Bannon, who's actually a committed white supremacist, rather, in the White House now. He used to edit Breitbart. So what Baldwin was saying in the 60s is entirely relevant to what's happening right now.
And Omowale, I want to get your thoughts on the clip we just saw. What do you make of that phrase, why can't we get past colour?
In the Pan-African Society Community Forum, colour is not the fundamental medium by which we analyse. So we would see class as actually fundamental, but we would see what we'd call race as primary. And all of it ultimately comes down to land. When you have a people that go around the world stealing other people's land, stealing their physical bodies and taking them across to other parts of the world, I mean, which is the basic way that imperialism operates, it breeds a savagery. And that savagery then inculcates colour. It takes colour on board. But colour is not the fundamental issue. It happens that the people that were stolen were Africans, and they were devalued in that process.
So you would agree with what the professor was saying, that it's not about colour?
We don't agree.
No, you don't agree. Okay.
There's a bit of common ground, but we definitely don't agree.
In an ideal world, of course, that would be great. But you're saying the reality is far more different.
That's right. The fundamental issue, we would argue, is class. I do not have more in common with a European person who would come on a TV program and comment than I do with Sandra Bland, who ended up murdered in a police station somewhere in US Satan. So his analysis is a wrong analysis. It doesn't mean that there's no common ground between us whatsoever. But the point I'm making is that race is crucial, but it is not the fundamental point. We take the position that class is actually the fundamental point. So that was the essential point that I was making.
Okay,
the point that the professor was making is it doesn't matter.
So is there, just briefly then, there's different interpretations of what racism is?
Yeah, there are different interpretations, and we take our interpretation based on the land. When a people have had their land taken away from them, which is very much the case for African people, they become disempowered. And that disempowerment is manifested as racism. You begin to see the disempowered people being taken advantage of.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there just for now as we take a look at our final clip, which shows Raoul Peck speaking about his documentary during this year's Berlin Film Festival. Please be advised that this clip contains some flash photography.
One should not see this film as strictly for the American audience. This film is more than ever for Europe as well. And Baldwin had exactly tried to do that. He's a humanist. It's not just about color or race for him. You know, by the way, in the film he said, white is a metaphor for power. And this is the most important phrase in the whole film.
So it's interesting there that the director of I Am Not Your Negro there, Raoul Peck, says that this documentary is relevant more than ever, especially to Europe. And do you think, Tony, is this in light of recent political trends where we see a shift to the far-right movements and because of Brexit and so on? Absolutely,
because as we all know that after Brexit there was an increase in racial attacks. And that happened right here in England. There's also been a rolling back of lots of equality kind of policies in that there's less funding now for the Commission for Equality and Human Rights, and a lot of issues to do with racism have been downplayed or ignored. So again, it's entirely relevant to what's happening right now. And
Omowale, what do you think? Is this documentary relevant to Europe, and why? And how does it relate to today's world?
What we find as African people is anything that is good, we find ourselves at the back of the queue. And anything that's bad, we find ourselves at the front of the queue. We could go through statistics, but there's not time to do that. So,
you're welcome to throw in one or two if you want.
No, it's just that if you're talking about prison occupancy, we will be overrepresented in prison occupancy. If you're talking about exclusion from schooling, our children will be the most excluded proportionately from schooling. If you're talking about the highest grades for school children, our children will be at the back of the queue of the highest grades. We would argue that these things do not happen coincidentally. They don't happen accidentally. They don't happen because we have a propensity to crime or that we're in some way lacking in intelligence. They happen because there is a system in place that organizes these things to happen. So the cutting edge, for instance, the Pan-African Society Community Forum is a support organization for the United Family and Friends campaign. Right. These are people whose loved ones have been murdered by the police. Now,
actually, I want to talk about something related to what you just said. I mean, in the last couple of minutes of this show, I want to talk about how Raoul says that one of the most important phrases in this documentary is that whiteness is a metaphor for power. Tony, can I get your thoughts on this?
Yeah, he's right, and that's what Baldwin says as well. Baldwin said that whiteness is a creation, that it's like there were no white people before they got to America, and then they had to create this idea of people being white in order to kind of disguise the power they had over other people. So I kind of agree with that one.
And Omowale, what does this mean to you? Whiteness is attached with power.
I will accept it as a metaphor only. The basis of power is land. Malcolm X, who is featured in the documentary, said that very clearly. Those who control the land have power. The reason why Europeans are very powerful in this world is because they've gone around and commandeered other people's lands. That's what has made them powerful. Africa is the richest continent in the world. They've managed for a few hundred years now to commandeer and take charge of the richest land in the world. That's what makes them the most powerful people in the world. So the whiteness issue is a metaphor, and I would accept it as a metaphor, but it takes us away from the real issue, which is land. If you take away people's land, they're disempowered. Those who take it away become powerful. The Aborigines are disempowered. The Palestinians are disempowered. Africans are disempowered. Wherever you see a people's land is stolen, they're disempowered. And the people who take it over become powerful.
I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was very interesting points and a very good discussion indeed on the issue of racism and this film. And that's it for this episode of Doc Review. Thanks for tuning in. And make sure you follow us on Twitter and Facebook, where you can find us on @DocReviewShow. Do let us know your views on today's film, and you can even suggest a documentary that you would like us to review. I've been Camelia Shambayati, and see you on the next episode of Doc Review.